Welcome, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to draft a table runner that doesn't have square ends to it. And I'm also going to show you how to add the binding around that particular table runner as well. On the home screen, select New Project and label this Stars and Stripes Door Hanger. And select OK. Select Design a Quilt from Scratch. Select a new quilt and select the style On Point. Select the Layout tab and change the number of blocks horizontal to 3 and vertical to 1. Change the finish size of each block to 4 inches. Select the Border tab and delete the border. Go to the Design tab and under Block Tools Set Block, scroll and we're going to find one of the default blocks, which is the default variable star. Click on each of the full block spaces in the quilt. Select Fabric Tools and select Open Library. I had previously downloaded one of the EQ online stashes and will be using a red, white, and blue collection. Click on the plus next to EQ Stash Online and then click on the plus next to the 2020-01 collection. Scroll down and locate Michael Miller Bandana Ballad and select all fabrics, add to sketchbook, and close. Under Fabric Tools, select Swap Color and recolor the stars. Let's create a rail fence block for the setting triangles. Since the blocks are 4 inches, we're going to want 4 columns in our block. Select the block work table and select a new block, Pieced EasyDraw block. Change the block width and height to 4. Snaps should be set at 4 and snapping options just snap to grid. Select the Grid tool and change the number of columns to 4 and rows to 1. Drag a grid from the upper left corner to the lower right corner. Go to the Color tab and color this in 2 of our fabrics. And select Add to Project Sketchbook. Select the quilt work table and go to Block Tools Set Block, scroll to the end and select the rail fence block, and with the controller command key select one of the empty spaces on the quilt. Then select Rotate. Click on each of the rail fence blocks to adjust the rotation in a pleasing format. Select Add to Sketchbook to save your work. Placing the rail fence block in those setting pieces actually will provide us with rotary cutting and foundation patterns that reflect the fact that half that block has been cut off. So select Print and Export and then select Rotary Cutting to give you a preview of what the cutting instructions would be for this block. Now let's add a pointed border to both edges. So select the block work table and select a new block, Pieced PolyDraw block. Keep the block width and height at 4. Under Drawing Tools, select the rectangle grid and make sure the horizontal and vertical grids are set at 4 by 4. And select the Polyline Tool. The Polyline Tool works differently than drawing in EasyDraw. The start and the stop point are exactly the same for every patch that we draw in PolyDraw. So start at 0, 0 with a double click, go down to the bottom of the block and single click, go over and up 1 inch, single click, go up to 1 inch at the top and single click, and then go back to 0, 0 and double click. Now my patch filled in, and that was because I have Hide Show Autofill on closed patches turned on. Now we can start at the 1, 0 coordinate, and we're going to repeat that process. Now, whatever starting point we start with, we have to use as our finish point as well. And then go over and do the one at 2 inches and do the half square triangle between 3 and 4 inches. Go to the Color tab and color this, and select Add to Project Sketchbook. Select the quilt work table and select Layer 2. In the Design tab, select Set Block, drag the block drafted in PolyDraw on Layer 2. Select it with the Adjust tool and change the block rotation to a minus 45 degrees. That's going to allow this block to match on that left edge. Before attempting to match the block, check your quilt grid setup and make sure Snap Block Position to Grid is turned off. Select Zoom In and drag a box over that upper right corner. Select the block with the Adjust tool and move it so the top points match exactly. Then scroll down to the bottom and make sure those same points on the bottom are matching as well. And you can hide show the quilt patch lines to make sure there's not white space between the two blocks. Then select the block and select Copy, Paste, select Flip, followed by Rotate, and click on the block 2 times. Then select it with the Adjust tool and move it to the right edge of the quilt. Zoom in and double check the placement of this block as well. Then select Add to Project Sketchbook. Now let's add a faux binding. Basically, it's a fake binding that will give us a view of what this quilt would look like with a binding around it. Select the Border tab, select Add, and select the style Long Horizontal. Turn off the lock size adjustments all, so left and right and top and bottom should be turned on. Drag the slider bar to move the left down to 0. Type in 0.25 next to the top. Go to the Design tab, select Fabric Tools, double check that you're on Layer 1, and then color the binding. What's tricky is adding a binding for those pointed corners. So select the block work table and select a new block, pieced PolyDraw block. Change the block width and height to 4.5 inches. Now I want to put a 1/4 inch binding, which means I'm going to need to snap to the 1/4 inch. So I'm going to multiply the 4.5 times 4, which means I'm going to select the horizontal and vertical measurements to 18 by 18. Select the Polyline Tool, and we're going to draw a mitered binding first on the left. Start at 0, 0, double click, go down a 1/4 inch, and then go down to the bottom, but stop a 1/4 inch from the bottom. Go to the lower left corner, another single click, and a double click back at the top. Select it with the Pick tool and select Clone, followed by Rotate 2 times, and move that to the top of the block. Go to the Color tab and color this, and select Add to Project Sketchbook. Go back to the Quilt work table, select Layer 2, and select Block Tools, Set Block, and drag the binding on the quilt. Select it with the Adjust tool and change the block rotation to minus 45 degrees. Position it on the left side of the quilt, matching up the top and bottom nodes. The binding actually is a little large, meaning I need to bring the block size down. So I clicked on the arrow next to the width. I have Preserve Aspect Ratio turned on and brought it down to 4.375. If you cannot get to 4.375, select your settings and select Snap Settings and make sure your nudge settings are set to 1/8 inch. Then select the Adjust tool and move the block so that they match up. Once that binding matches up, select Send to Back. Now, once I have adjusted to 0.4375, I'm going to zoom in and match up both the top and the bottom. Select Copy followed by Paste. Change the block rotation to 135 degrees and move it to the right side of the block. Zoom in and position it and select Send to Back. Select Fit to Work Table and select Add to Project Sketchbook. Thanks so much for watching. This particular table runner would be super easy to piece. And EQ will give you both rotary cutting or foundations for each of the blocks in the quilt. If you would like additional tips and techniques, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com.